Really glad to have everybody here with us. I see a lot of familiar faces. I got away from saying old friends, but familiar faces, and I also see some new faces. So we are honored to have you. My name is Grant Humphreys. This is the first one of these we've done in some time, but we're going to start making it a regular rhythm where we come and present the master plan and tell the story of Carlton Landing. Um, and I think, Seth, we're looking at doing this about once a quarter, just like this. Get together. It's not a huge production. Appreciate the meeting house bringing in some good treats for us today. Um, so feel free to get, while I'm speaking, this is very informal. If you want to get up and get a refill on the coffee or get a pastry, then make yourself at home. But what we'd like to do is about once a quarter come together and tell the stories about how Carlton Landing was originally envisioned, what the motivation was, where we came from, and where we see ourselves going to. Um, why do we do that? Why does it matter? Here's the deal. Over the years, Carlton Landing has grown a fair bit. And when it first started out, Jen and I were the first occupants here. We moved in April of 2012. And if anyone wanted to buy a lot in Carlton Landing, um, I'll show you some pictures here in a minute, but it was such an act of amazing faith, okay? That really so much trust and believing in the vision and understanding that this thing could possibly happen. Such an act of faith that we would need to have them and their kids, over to our house, and we'd cook dinner for them, and we'd tell the story about what we envisioned Carlton Landing could be like someday. And I spent a lot of time going like this. This is what you do when you have nothing to actually point to. You just kind of wave your arms, right? But it was such an act of faith on their part and trust, and we appreciated it deeply. But over time, the concept proves out, the vision's realized in fits and starts, and the community grows. And it got to the point that Jen and I would show up at a park or an event or a potluck, and we would not know most of the people there. There had been enough turnover and enough new owners coming in. And then it got kind of nice to actually go in and be anonymous. And I remember one time being in at the bonfire a couple years ago, and a guy comes up and he goes, "Hey, how's it going? Where are you from?" I said, "Oh, we live in Oklahoma City." And he goes, "Have you got a place here?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Wow, this place is something else." He goes, "Man, we started coming here a couple months ago, and I just love it. Have you been to this place?" I was like, "Yeah." And I had this great conversation with him for about 5 or 10 minutes, and I was just a neighbor. I wasn't the town founder. I wasn't the guy with, responsibility or anything. I was just a guy talking to a neighbor, and it was so nice. And so, what we want to do with these times is for me to come in and be a neighbor with you guys, tell stories about where we came from. And because we don't have the opportunity to have everybody over for dinner, as much as we'd love that, um, and you'd be blessed with Jen's cooking because she can really throw down some good food. Um, but this will be an opportunity for us to just stay connected. So let me start off, and what we're going to do is talk about why we chose to do Carlton Landing in the first place. What were the motivations that really helped us um, envision this kind of community? We think the built environment has a very deterministic effect on the way that people live and interact. And so how we do the bricks and sticks of the built environment matter, okay? We believe that humans are relational creatures, that we are made for community. And especially in modern life, since World War II especially, there's been a breakdown of a lot of the community structures that give people a sense of belonging and allow people to know and to be known. And so, as we were looking at real estate about 15 years ago, no, it's now 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I looked and said, real estate there's got to be a financial economical model that supports what you're doing. So there is a way of integrating in fair value and a risk reward, but it can't just be about making money. We've got a couple seats up here if you guys want them. So, and we've got comfortable seats if you want wingbacks. We got that. It can't just be about making money. You've got to look beyond just the financial bottom line and say, what are the outcomes associated with the work that we're doing in real estate? What are the social outcomes, the ecological outcomes? How does this impact the way that people live and interact? And so we thought, let's create a place that actually is designed to foster community, okay? That brings people together and it strengthens relationships. To anchor ourselves into our intent, we put together some core values. And the 3 core values that we put together back in 2009 were family, simplicity, and creation. And I'll spend just a couple minutes talking about that. Family just goes to what I was just talking about. It's not just mom and dad plus 2.2 kids. This is just saying we are made for relationships. And so we want to create a place that actually intentionally is committed to strengthening relationships. In a marriage, between parents and children, in the extended family, and from neighbor to neighbor. We want to have a place that's inclusive and inviting so that if someone comes in from the outside and they're just passing through, they get the same dignity, the same respect, the same welcome as someone who's got the biggest house on the block. In order to do that, we decided, okay, this can't be a gated neighborhood. This is going to be an open space that's open to the public. And we went down the road of saying this is going to be a real community, not just a resort enclave. Second core value that we have is creation. And there's 2 ways that I'd break that down. The first way is to say, if you look around us, we think that we're in a pretty beautiful place of nature here. And so the created space that we're surrounded by, we want to be good stewards of that. I want to be able to look back and say, in the way that we impacted the earth, we minimized the negative impact and we maximized the cultural impact. Okay? So we take an ecological approach. Because of our location, we couldn't be in the Lead for Homes program because we're outside of an urban area. But we look at things like sustainable construction, about life cycle cost of infrastructure, about this happens to be one of the best locations, I'd say the best location for something that's called light imprint new urbanism, which is the way that we handle stormwater management. So there's a lot of things that we've done in Carlton Landing that are unique and committed to this value of being good stewards of the natural world. The second way that we look at creation is to look at how we live and how people make sense of the world. And I mean that in 2 ways. One way is that as humans, it's our job to make sense of the world, to look around us and say, what matters and what does this mean to me? I'm making sense of it. It's another role for humans to make sense. Sense is purpose, meaning, and we can actually make that through our creative talents, through artistic endeavors. And so we create culture. And so we look at how do we do cooking and craft beer and music and poetry and art and photography and architecture and construction and craftsmanship. All these things are cultural artifacts that help show future generations what we believed was important to us. And we want to have life-giving culture coming into this space. So we celebrate the creative spirit that I believe God put in all of us, and we want to be patrons of artists. And so you'll see things that if there's a music festival or an artist in residence program, morning, Cole. These kinds of things are things that we want to be champions on. We want to say, yes, we want to be a place that welcomes artists and supports them. Simplicity is just more important Cole, there's chairs right up here, but more important every day. I mean, our world is moving so fast, and we just said, let's do something that's countercultural and intentional. It's about slowing down, unplugging, finding a way to get the kids off the screen for a few minutes and reconnect with nature, live seasonally, know where your food comes from. All of these things are things that I'd love to spend an extra 4 hours on, but these are the things that went into the lifestyle that we chose for Carlton Landing. Okay, so those are the core values. What was really cool is when the town of Carlton Landing, when we formed the seal for the town of Carlton Landing, and you'll see it here in a minute. At the bottom of that, I took these words and I put them in Latin at the bottom. So it's Familia Creatio Simplicitas. How cool is that to create a town and get the core values branded on their town seal, just to say this isn't something that we thought of in 2009 and then we abandoned by 2012. This is something that we're committed to. We think it's universal, it's eternal, and it's going to be what we're about 50 years from now. I mentioned the built environment. I'll just be on this. I need to speed up the pace. Seth's probably going to say, Grant, you're going to run out of time. We look at the design of our community in two ways: hardware and software. If you think of your computer operating system, it goes onto a PC or a laptop, and then you take the latest version of, Windows or whatever you use, and you load that software on. The bricks and sticks and the urbanism and the architecture and the landscape architecture create a built environment. And these are the pieces that shape the way that we live and interact physically. Okay? Jim Hassenbeck's with us. So Jim is our town architect. And Jim introduced me to Duane Plater Zyberk, our planners, in 2006, 5 or 6. So, and he's been the town architect from the beginning. Okay? He and I sit on the design review committee. So every home that gets built, if you don't like it, you can come to us and tell us why you don't like it. If you like it, we'd love to hear that too. But everything that gets built goes through Jim, and even like in the town's leased premises and the core lease land, design review regulates that. All that's laid out in the declaration that we put together. So that takes care of the shape of things, but then there's also the software side, and this is the operating system. And so we look at the cultural programming, the activities, the events. Some of these are formal, and they're an annual tradition like Porch Fest. Others are things that happen spontaneously on the sidewalk when two neighbors run into each other, and there's a cultural norm, and that exchange that allows them to have a strong sense of shared experience is really part of the software. If someone goes through a time and loss of a loved one and they're grieving, and neighbors take a pie over or take a casserole or a dinner over to them and just love on them, if that's a cultural norm, then that's part of the cultural software of community. Okay? The way the church ministers to people, the way the school brings in kids. 80% of our kids that go to our school come from outside of Carlton Landing. The traditions that they cultivate over time in the school and the way that the parents interact with the teachers, all of those, as they become cultural norms in a place, are part of the cultural software. We've been real intentional early on to try to direct that, and then over time you see that we can lift up our hand and see that it stays the course, and it's continuing to be part of the lifestyle here for the longer term, but it's handed over, it's transmitted to people who carry the torch, and it's not the developer's role to do it, it's everyone's shared responsibility to be part of this culture that we love so much about this place. Okay? A little bit of historical context. When Lyndon B. Johnson became president, one of the first orders of business that he had after the assassination of JFK was to come out and dedicate Lake Eufaula. And so the lake was put in place in 1963. It's the largest lake in the state. It has now, from the latest shoreline management plan or environmental impact study, the Corps says over 800 miles of shoreline. So it's the 9th largest man-made lake in the country, largest lake in the state. Say 9th, it might be the 9th largest Corps of Engineers project, something like that. It's one of those. So it was put together in 1963. We showed up as a family 9 years later. 8 years later, Dad? Okay, so 7 years later, my granddad, I had lunch yesterday with Seth out on Highway 9 at the Landing Cafe. And I said, right across the street here is this neighborhood called Longtown Estates. We grew up there on the lake from the early 70s, and then Dad started acquiring land here in Carlton Landing in 2005, 6, 7. So in 7, he bought the land here. This land was not in our family for generations. I've heard that. They're like, yeah, I've been sitting on that land since statehood. I was like, no, not really. But what's interesting is from 1963 until 2007, this land remained almost completely untouched. It was used for farming, and then they quit using it for farming, and the land at the top, which had been farmed on for decades, grew over. The pine trees that you have to the east of us here were actually planted by the Corps of Engineers in the early 70s or late 60s. And so that was a transplant. Before that, this whole area was kind of farmed. But the land had just grown fallow, and the lake, even though the lake was this beautiful natural amenity, economically, it made no impact for this part of the state. And so you have the natural amenity, it lacks vision, it lacks committed leadership. And we showed up in 2007 and decided, hey, let's do something with this land. This picture to the right, I'd ask Seth to include this. If you see the movie True Grit, the old one with John Wayne or the new one with Kurt Russell, Jeff Bridges, I think, they mention going to J.J.'s McAllister. In that book, it takes place in this part of the country. It takes place around McAllister, and that's the old store from that's mentioned in True Grit. We brought in Duane Plater Zyberg, who is a master planning firm from Miami, Florida, to come and do a design charrette in July of 2008. I was familiar with Duane Plater Zyberg, or DPZ, because they did Seaside and they did Rosemary Beach and Alice Beach, and several of you have been to those places and familiar with the communities on 30A. And we thought, would it be possible to bring them into the interior of America and do a lake project? At that time, we were the first new urbanist project after almost 30 years since Seaside was done, that was not within 30 miles of the coast or directly in front of the major growth direction of a major metropolitan area. And so you saw some scattered in other parts of the country on the interior. However, they were always about to be mowed over by subdivisions, and they positioned themselves in that location. So we thought, could we do a regional play here in the interior? We don't have the coast. We said, let's look at a 3.5 mile drive radius, and we discovered, lo and behold, there's 15 million people within 3.5 hours drive that did not have a really compelling weekend escape option. And we thought, could we put this here and pull from Wichita and Fort Smith, and now we're pulling from Kansas City? I wouldn't have projected that. We said, can we pull from North Texas? That was really critical for us. And we've even pulled from Houston a little bit. I wouldn't have projected that. This is the design charrette team in Oklahoma City. Here's me working with Tom Lowe, who is a planner with DPZ. He's based out of Charlotte. He's now on his own, but he's been really instrumental in guiding our steps here. My dad, Kirk, was presenting to the group in the charrette. Charrette is just an intensive design process that took about 10 days. And we brought everybody, the engineers and the Corps and the planners and the architects, into one room, and we put together a shared vision. Jim reconvened the architects in May of 2009, I believe, for an architectural charrette. And we brought in architects from different parts of the country, and we positioned them with architects from Oklahoma, and put together some of these books. The Living Tradition is our design code that we have. We already had the declaration, and then we cited two books that we thought were really important. One is The Original Green by an architect named Steve Mouzon, which talks about sustainable development, and another is The Charter of New Urbanism, which was put together by a group called the Congress of New Urbanism. In the comprehensive plan that we had a master plan. So in July of 2008, we did the charrette. By November of that year, we had the master plan. Fast forward, and actually, I'm just going to, this is the master plan, not the comprehensive plan yet. We'll get to that in a minute. But some things to acknowledge The urban transect was critical, so this is a form-based code that shows how the homes relate to the common areas. It does not get into the Euclidean or use-based design code that most cities use for zoning maps. If you're operating a home-operated business, or you're living in your home, or you run a daycare out of your home, it matters not to me. We run the home through design review, and then you have an opportunity to live in that space, and actually home-run businesses are encouraged. What we're really interested in is how does the home interact with the built-in or with the common area, and what do the spaces between the buildings look like, and across the street, how does the street function? That's what we look at in a form-based code. When we put the master plan together, it initially covered, this is about 970 acres of our north land holdings. We used to own another 700 acres across the lake, across the cove. We sold that a couple years ago, and we put a long-term development restriction on it so that we continue to look at the view down the cove in the way that you see it today for the next 30 years. In the early days, from 2008 to 11, we were putting the roads in on the entrance drive, and this is my car getting stuck about 10 times a year. There's a lot of mud out here in those times. This is me and the builders, the original builders, walking down Park Street towards the lake. So that's this street that you guys walked down this morning. That's what it looked like. It was dirt and trees and nothing else. The tent right up here it was located either in front of my house or your house. So this is in front of Park Street and Boulevard. And I mean, this is Memorial Day 2008 or 9, I believe. No, it'd be Memorial Day 2000, maybe 10. In these early days, this is where I'm casting the vision. I'm saying it's going to be great. And for 4 years, we did not hear one actual sincere word of encouragement from anybody, except for mom and dad. I mean, they're always like, "We believe in you, Grant," and then they kind of walk away. Yeah, everyone's heard the pitch, and they said, "Huh, wow, good luck," and they walked away and they said, "That'll never work." I mean, over and over. So it was a time where you really had to have a strong sense of faith to keep moving forward. 2012 to 15, we founded the Carlton Landing Academy because we thought it was important to have education be part of our overall experience here in Carlton Landing. And we incorporated into a town of Carlton Landing in 2013. You can see the town seal here with the core values established. I'm going to move faster. We're only up to 2015. 2016, we started a church. It was important for me that the church not be another developer project. And so we waited until we had other people who said, "We want to see a church in Carlton Landing." And we said, "Great, we want to support you, but it's going to be your water to carry. And we're going to carry water in the background, but we need to make sure that this is not just another initiative under the Carlton Landing Developer Master Plan." And it wasn't. This was a grassroots, started by homeowners. And it took several years from starting in our living room up until the point that it was in the church tent, which was located right here, and then 4 years in the church tent. A lot of you remember those days. Patiently waiting until we had a Sunday when there was a swarm of bees that came through the church. And I was up, and the service pastor role so I was giving the announcements. And while I'm up there, I'm wearing cowboy boots and Wranglers, and I feel a bee go into my pants. And I'm up there talking, and it bites on the back of my knee as I'm giving the announcements. Some of the people that were in the service that day said, "Hey, look, we own a $1 million home in Carlton Landing. We'd love to get out of this tent and provide some funds that would allow us to have a real building, even with air conditioning and doors." And so that's what kicked off the capital campaign for the new building. From 2016 to 19, by this time we had in 2012 we had 11 homes. In 2013 we added 18 more. So we're talking baby steps and incremental growth for the first several years. You can get an updated timeline of what we did year by year in terms of the number of homes added. If you want that, just let me know and I'll get it for you. But it goes year by year, and in those early days, we celebrated small steps. If someone opened up a hot dog stand and they were able to make a few dollars profit, we high-five that, because it was really hard. You didn't have the economy. It's a remote location. It's a seasonal economy. And we were just needing to look at celebrating humble beginnings. Okay. As the community continued to grow, by 2019, we had about 200 and maybe it was 185 homes. The market was soft at that time. This is before COVID. I'd been in the home building business, and we built about 2/3 of the homes that were here. Our company, Traditional Craft Homes, maybe about half of them. And I had 30 spec homes that were sitting on the market in 2018, 2019. The market was soft. Everything was selling at around $200 a square foot. So, should have bought in. It was a great time. We decided that was the best time to fire sell everything and get out of the home building business, because property values were going to be soft from that point forward, of course. They weren't. They actually did all right. So 2020 to 2022. In this season, COVID showed the importance of the core values that we put in place 10 years earlier. If you were going through that COVID season and looking for a place to quarantine, this was it. This was the best spot in the world to get away and continue to live normal life. I see a lot of heads, people nod, people looking back. I mean, other parts of the world, it felt like the world was on fire. Scared to go out. People were scared of strangers. I mean, and you come to Carlton Landing, and we had a real respecting view of COVID. I had it. My family had it. I had friends that died from it. But in that time, Carlton Landing was a place where you could come and find healthy community that wasn't ruled by fear. There was still joy. There was still peace. There was still a place for you to come and have the important social interactions that are really necessary for mental health. And so I think that was a time that really, it proved its value. And I'm just really thankful. Sometimes the value of things aren't evident all the time, but it's in hard times that the real underlying intrinsic value that something possesses, or that a person possesses, comes to the surface. They talk about, the character of a person and how they respond under pressure, because whatever's inside is going to get squeezed out, right? I think that's the same for Carlton Landing. If you look at Carlton Landing and the character of the community in a hard time, this is a great place to be. The relationships that you guys can form here tend to have a deeper, more authentic, valuable character to them. And that's just blessing. That's not something we could design or force or will. It's something we could pray for and we could hope for, but it's ultimately it's up to the people that are involved in both sides of that relationship and how they choose to lean into it. I'll give you a few looks at things that are coming forward. We've got a few more slides, but I'll knock these out. We can have some Q&A. We've been going for 30 minutes, right? Okay. I thought we went an hour. Okay. The town square is something we've cut the road in initially, and this is a picture of the town square. There's some things in this rendering that I promise you will never happen, okay? I doubt that we'll have this building here, but that's the actual location of the lakefront pool. And to the south, you see a wedding chapel here, and we'd love to see this happen. We've already got the plans drawn. Jim did a great job several years back of a wedding chapel that seats about 250 people or so. And so this is designed, and as you're driving into Carlton Landing and you come down Ridgeline Road and you get to the bottom, if you look ahead, the steeple is on the center line of the road as a view terminus, welcoming you into Carlton Landing. It would look out over the lake and be a great spot for weddings. To the south of that and to the west of that is an area that is called the Nature Center facilities. And so this was part of the Corps of Engineers lease land. The south side of the road right here is the beginning of the Corps lease land, and everything owned down here was always owned by the Corps. So we were restricted. When we came in here in 2008 and started cutting roads, we didn't realize we were signing up for a 7-year process before we could have legal right to actually walk to the lake. We did not have the core lease completed until I think it was May of 2015. That actually involved an act of Congress to fund a shoreline management plan and environmental impact study that was done in 2013 for the whole lake area. It hadn't been updated since 1977. And it was only after all of that was complete that we could go to the Corps and say, what would we like to do down here, and what are we allowed to legally do down here? And so we partnered with the Nature Conservancy to do a series of trails and outdoor exhibits in that area to the south. You know, the trail is there. That's the first step of many steps as what we think would be a great nature center down there that could help reconnect kids from the school into the woods, outdoor classrooms, walking trails. It's great for us just in our own health and enjoyment and wellness to get out into nature, but also allowing the town to step in, and the town could put together the nature center facilities that would include conference space, retreat space. If you want to do a corporate retreat, you could come here. And so the town is taking some steps on that right now. I mentioned the trails. This is a master plan that we have for the trails. I love walking through the nature center. That is a first step of what I hope to see over the long term. And sometimes because it's under the Corps and under the Corps lease with the town, there's some more red tape associated with it. Like if we want to just repair the trails, we have to go through a process of getting approval on how we repair the trails. But just know that that's the first step of many, and there's a lot of work to do there. The Marina Center is a vision that we laid out several years ago. And again, here, the Corps of Engineers line runs right here. And we're trying to, how do we seamlessly integrate the master plan across private property and onto the Corps land? And we worked with Tom Lowe to design this concept. We decided to put the marina up in the North Cove where it is today. That would take the boat traffic as the marina grows up to 300 slips, and it would put it on the major part of the lake. It allows this ski cove to be more of a recreational area, quieter, safer for kids that are swimming. I was encouraged this morning at the town meeting. If you get a chance, go to the town meeting sometime. It's like a Civics 101 lesson. But this morning they approved they let me know that the Corps approved this week a buoy line that would restrict the swimming area right off the swim beach here. And from the courtesy dock all the way up to the church, that whole area is going to be sectioned off for swimmers and paddle boards and kayaks only. And then from where the courtesy dock is moving up to the north, they're going to have signage to say this is only trolling motors for boats up in that area. Okay, and we asked for them to close off the whole cove, but they say that there's a large fishing area, and when the fish are spawning, they want to be able to get back there. And so we said, okay, let's restrict it to trolling motors. They went for that. And so that allows this whole cove permanently to be for recreation, for quieter water sports, safe for the kids. That's great. And it allows us to move the boat gas and the service and the wakeboard boats and all that up onto the marina site and out onto the main body of water. This next year, by next summer, you'll also see a ship store. And so we are approved by the Corps of Engineers now. We're moving forward with construction. Should be done by May. Great looking. It looks like a Carlton Landing building floating on the water. Inside, Jim Hassenbeck did the architecture on this. Sometimes I have an original idea. I wake up, I have a dream, I have something like that. 90% of the time, I'm stealing stuff from other places. It's good ideas, best practices, things that you like. And I think we all do that. Like you find inspiration. So we found if you see the ship store when it's all finished, and then you go to the Baltimore City Harbor, there's a red building in the middle of Baltimore City Harbor that is just this quaint, um, you know, red wood, clapboard looking building, and it's going to be fantastic. So we stole that from Baltimore. Yeah, yeah. Town center neighborhood. So we've got a couple phases that are coming up. This is phase 6, and so this is Lincoln Square. And if you look down at the end of that line that runs down, we call that center line. Several of you have some homes around center line. Then the view terminus for that is the lakefront pavilion that's right up here. And that, we call it center line because that's basically the center of the book. If you look at the master plan and you open it up on either side, you're going to have a boardwalk and a Park Street and town center over on this side. To the north, you'll have a boardwalk. You'll have Church Street, which is going to be designed just like Park Street, and you'll have the Marina Center. And so the town center and the Marina Center act like two ends of the dumbbell, on either side of that. Center line's at the middle. You can also see, so here's the church looking onto the marina. We've done the thinning and the clearing for phase 8. Timeline for phase 8, I'll just tell you, we've got 30 lots that are available right now. We're bringing on phase 5B, which is up on Ridgeline Road. We'll be cleaning that area up and getting that phase completed by the end of the first quarter of 24. We also have lots that are south of Ridgeline Road up on Sandstone Drive. I've got lots that are available in phase 6. And so I'm going to do phase 8 when we think it's time. But at any point in time, we'd like to keep about 1 year's absorption of lot inventory that's available. And so for me right now, I'm not expecting that 2024 is going to be a banner year in terms of lot sales. I'll go back to what Dad said 15 years ago. We were talking to one of our investors, and he said, how are you doing the project from a financing standpoint? And we said, well, we're not going to use any debt. We're just going to use equity on the development side. He says, what do you do if you don't have, the lot sales, or if it's slower to go than you expect? Because there's going to be times that the economy goes through these ups and downs, several cycles during the build out of Carlton Landing. And the comment was, if things slow down, we'll just mow the grass and we'll come back next year. And that's our posture towards the long-term stability of Carlton Landing. We always want to have about a year's worth of lots that are available. That gives us time to build the next year. If things slow down, that's fine. We can wait that out. We're going to continue to be in a good place over the long term with stable growth. Our expectation is that we could build out, I think over the next few years, you'll build back up to maybe it's 50 lots a year, net growth on top of resales. We can do that, 50 lots a year for the next 25 years. Okay? We've got 860 acres of land left to develop. We're not in a rush. We've got a real long-term view, and we think that good things happen when they're allowed to curate slowly, whether it's in a crock pot or my smoker at home, or it's in a community building. Low and slow is the way to go. Okay? So we're not in a rush, and we think that the quality of culture, the quality of relationships happens best when it's not rushed. And that's totally different than what you see in most land development approaches today. Yes, sir. Yep. Okay, so this is the Marina Center. You can see it right out here. And in time, it'll go from what you see today to this picture, where we could have a softball field, tennis and pickleball courts, and a little soccer field. Okay. At the end of that, at the north end of that, is the marina center, the structures, and we'll have boat services, we'll have retail, we'll have other restaurant and amenities that support the marina. Okay. As you look at this slide, you can see that that all takes place right up here, and we've got these 3 lagoons that we're now phasing out. So we formed a rural water district, RWD number 20 for Pittsburgh County. We formed that in 2012. That's their lagoons. They're working with the Department of Environmental Quality to remove the lagoons, restore the land back to native condition, and our land development phases will extend over that. So that's going to happen as we get into phase 8 and as we get into phase 9, probably over the course of the next 3-4 years. You'll see those phase out and you'll see lots come over that. And if you're into gardening, it'll be a great place to buy a lot because the ground will be incredibly fertile, nutrient rich. Other amenities. One thing I just say on this, from a retail standpoint, I mentioned about how challenging it is to put together a retail pro forma in Carlton Landing. Please support your local shop owners. They take an incredible amount of risk. They work harder than they could if they were in other locations, and we want to be really supportive of that. So we take an approach, instead of, if you go to Disney World, it's beautiful. Everyone loves Disney World, right? But anyone that's working there has a name tag on, and they're all on the same payroll. They all work for Disney Corp. Everything goes up to the top of the pyramid, and Eisner, whoever's at the top, is driving that ship. If you come here, anyone that you talk to is an employee that works for that shop owner. There is not a hierarchy of control. We've intentionally said we want to take an entrepreneurial approach where we invite entrepreneurs and small business owners, and we set the stage for them, and then we get out of the way and we let them run their business, and they rise and they fall. What we do to support that is we just do percentage rents. So we start with, what can your building actually support in terms of any kind of return on investment to the structure. So Mama Tiggs today is in the same shed that we built 10 years ago for $60,000 because another guy said, I'll provide the labor if you provide the material. It was $60,000. That's how it started out. And honestly, that's about all that we could support. And it was the Fish Shack, and then it was Mama Tiggs. Now, Mama Tiggs has been around long enough. This year, between now and next spring, we're going to build them a enclosed building with indoor seating area. And I don't know if Seth, is that on a slide? Okay, so I told some guys last night, I said, hey, just because people are so, they've loved the time at Mama Tiggs, we want to give the full experience, but we want you to be inside. So not the full experience. So we will actually keep the flies out of the space. And we want to say thank you to Bob and Jeanette for their patience over the years of continuing, and the people that sit outside in a hot August afternoon when the flies are carrying off a small child. So now we're gonna bless them. The food trucks, we own the food trucks. We rent those out. Like I say, percentage rents. We don't get much of a return on that monetarily, but we think that that's important, and we want to do more to grow the food business here. Any ideas? Any willingness to pitch in? We'd be happy to talk about that. To the west, there's an area, as you're driving in on the entrance road, you see the gravel road that goes off to the west. That's an area that goes back to the homestead. And so the homestead is, there's a nice pond back there. From the entrance road, it goes back up to down the hill towards that pond. Those are going to be larger acreages. I'll do another presentation specific about the homestead because it's going to be an interesting way where we transfer larger land tracts, anywhere from 1/2 acre up to 4 acres. We transfer larger land tracts to an owner who then has the ability to subdivide and redevelop as they see fit. So it's transferring that development responsibility to them, or right option, and it allows them to pick the neighbors that they want to have in that space with them as they subdivide the lots. It could be for a family compound. It could be for a group of friends. But we're going to look at bringing that onto the market in 2024. We've already got the area platted. It's been approved. The road's been cut, and we've got utilities to put in place over the next 6 to 9 months. More on that to come. This is a look at that homestead area. So from the entrance road where you have the gravel road that comes down, you're going to swing down the hill, and basically all the roads or all the lots that are on that road, you've got 13 lots, and that's what's going to be available. This is a beautiful part of the property. Whereas Carlton Landing is known as being a place where you can always have a sense of community, and you have to kind of carve out space for privacy. You got to pull the blinds, you got to close yourself off a little bit so you're not in the fishbowl, and then you can make privacy, but it's not the default mode. Homestead's just the opposite. In the homestead, you'll have privacy, and when you want community, you invite people over. There will be a community building, an amenity down at the bottom next to the pond, like a clubhouse, and a place for those neighbors to gather. Those neighbors will be in the same homeowners association, so they'll still be part of the community, part of Carlton Landing, have access to our pools and amenities here. They'll be paying dues, but they'll be down in a different part of the master plan. That's what I've got. I want to open it up for some Q&A, and I want to respect your time. I think we told everybody that we'd get you out of here by 10 o'clock. Okay. There might be a football game coming up in about an hour and 10 minutes. So. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so 9A is another, it's outside of Carlton Landing. It's not part of it. And so that's another development that's happening adjacent. And anyone that wants to pitch in and help lift the economic reality in this part of the state, I'm a huge fan of. So whether they would be located southwest of Carlton Landing. So they're down in this area off of McNally Road. What you'd have in the homestead is you'd have larger acreages that are part of Carlton Landing and have access. You come in on the same entrance road and you have access to all the amenities in Carlton Landing. If you look in, around 30A in Florida, you've got a home that's in Rosemary Beach, and you have property that's on the other side of the street. And there's a real value in being part of the declaration, the governance structures, the community amenities within that space. So, but I'm a fan of anything. But as they were doing that project, I'm a fan of anything that's helping build out this part of the state. As they were doing that project, they asked, can we tie into Carlton Landing? And I said, absolutely not. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So I said, they said, would you like to buy the land? I said, no, we're into selling land. We got enough land. And the guys that are developing that are friends of mine, and I love those guys. I think they're great guys. But I said, you need to know my position will always be to do what's best for Carlton Landing, and I see you as direct competition. So, and I love you, but I'm not going to help you. So,
Grant?
Yeah, Steve.
We have approximately 325 homes today.
Yes.
As the development goes to 500, 600 homes, how does the plan duplicate the core values of what you're talking about?
Good question.
Someone think, well, we're like a suburb of Edmond now. We're way out here. We're not part of what's down here.
Good question. No, I appreciate the question. So for the video, the question on the first one was about 9A. I didn't repeat the question. On the second one, how do you continue to, I'll put it in this words, hold to the core values and reproduce the essence of Carlton Landing as you continue to grow to scale? Okay. In terms of the built environment, we see like Redbud Park has 17 homes around it. Firefly Park, the south part, has 23 homes around it. There's some math to the scale. If you get anywhere from 8 to 20 homes that share and look around a central shared green space, there's a pretty strong sense of community within that. You've seen this in the crossings, you've seen it in different parks. Um, as you look at the master plan of what we're planning to build out, I'm going to zoom back, see if we've got this. Seth, I don't think we do. Tom Lowe's plan? Okay. So as you look at the master plan, what I would just say is this element of, homes around the shared green space finds a way to repeat itself, and you end up having like a patchwork quilt of smaller individual nodes that kind of identify within their own space. Okay, so that's the first thing, is don't get too big around one experience. So the idea is we want to have several smaller community pools instead of a big water park. We want our parks to be of a size that they cultivate a sense of community, and they're not too big. It's not Central Park, but it's something that's much smaller. The second thing that you do is you look at proximity to goods and services. And so we designed the whole master plan around a 5-minute pedestrian shed or a 5-minute walk pattern. And for us, that's a quarter mile. You should be able to walk within a quarter mile. You should be able to walk to gathering places, restaurant, place to buy some stuff. Maybe it's a post office, these kind of elements. And so we scatter those around throughout the community, and we don't consolidate all of those into just one corner of the community that would require you to have a golf cart or a car to get there. The marina right now is an exception because the master plan hasn't been built out yet. So everyone, I get it, you got to have a golf cart or a car to get to the marina. That's a reality until we get the master plan fully built out there. But long term, the master plan is going to go all the way up to the marina, and people will feel like they can just walk out their door and have the marina right there. So I think those are the two things. Here we've got homes that'll be built up right up against the marina center. And for them, they might have to hop in the car and come over to the town center, or maybe by that time we have a people mover that just goes back and forth and makes it easy. Yeah. Sure. So our core lease goes all the way up, not just to this cove and to the next cove, but up north of that cove to where Cedar Point Estates is right up there. So our master lease with the core, the town's lease with the core, goes all the way up to Cedar Point Estates. So we have this cove, which will be for boat traffic in the marina. In the master lease that I did with the core, we said up here we could do floating cabins. It could be an expansion of additional boat slips, or it could be floating cabins that are out there in the water. That cove is a beautiful cove. I like to go there, if we're in the pontoon boat. In between these two, you've got a landmass here, a peninsula that sticks out that we initially cited as a place for RVs, that you could have RVs that would come to the lake. There's a strong RV, I'd call them land yachts more than the kind of like picture you might get in your mind of an old RV. But there's a strong RV community that looks for places like this, and it becomes a national destination. Really, if you got something that's compelling with great views and access to goods and services, they'd see this as something that's pretty compelling. To this side, the land mass that's to the east, you'll expect trails. Yeah, that's right behind me across the cove here. Trails, cabins, possibly a summer camp, horse riding trails, pedestrian trails, other types of camping and glamping locations. So you could have, primitive campsites where you set up your own tent, or you could have an under canvas experience where you're coming into a canvas tent with a bearskin rug and a wood burning stove, that kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I hear you. So the question was for community amenities that maybe now are 10 years old. Firefly was put in about 8 years ago, I believe. So how do we deal with it while you're looking at new growth and new investment on the new development phase? How do you continue to take care of the existing infrastructure and parks and areas, common areas like that? The association, Stephen Rill is here and he's on the board with me for the association. Seth Gebhardt's on the board for the association, and then Dom Dominic is the other um, member on the board. Um, Lindsay Gibson is here, and she's the owner relations rep, and so she's the point of contact, and then she interacts with Stephen Coville, who's our general manager. Just to let everyone know who's involved. The way that the declaration reads is that individual locations have maintenance zones. And in addition to your general assessment, you also pay a maintenance zone due for the common area maintenance within your space. If homeowners within a given maintenance zone wish to make additional improvements to the space or see those improvements made that upgrade the whole common area, could be new landscaping, could be new hardscape, could be new outdoor kitchens, or any of the above or everything else. That can be done at the request of the homeowners, and it would be charged back to the homeowner's maintenance zone, shared with everybody that's in that area. And so the developer's role is to say, I'm going to get it done, I'm going to build it, we're going to have a transfer where that goes to the association. And then the developer steps back, and I'm looking at the next phase. The association is saying it's our job to maintain. And sometimes the association will take the initiative and say, let's make this a little bit better. But a lot of times their job is just to maintain. The association is getting on its feet and doing well, better financially, and with every year that goes forward, it'll get better. But the association is not looking for ways to spend more money. If homeowners wish to have an upgraded experience or have additional items built or constructed or added to a specific area, I'd say talk to one of those people, and then we can put together a budget and we can see it happen. That's happened several times before, where people came in and they said, look, we'd like to see a fire pit, we'd like to see park benches, we'd like to see additional landscaping. And we said, great, we'll scope it, we'll bid it, we'll come back to you all for acceptance of this, and then the executive board will approve that as a project. And then frankly, we work those costs over a 3-year period of time for payback to the association. So the association can act as an initial bank, or it could do a special assessment to that maintenance zone if it's more than the association can bank. And then over 3 years' time, those homeowners collectively pay back the association. So that's a good question, and that provides a vehicle for long-term, not just maintenance, wear and tear accepted, but really maintaining things at a level that's going to be nice for the long term. Good question. Yeah, so community garden went in. That one, the association went in and paid the freight and fixed it. We didn't, because that's a one-off location. We didn't charge that back to the Firefly Park maintenance zone, I don't believe. I think that was just out of the general fund paid by the association and not reimbursed. Because pools and the community garden are unique in that there's just one of them. And so we kind of say that shouldn't be put just to that maintenance zone. Okay. It's 10 o'clock. I'm available, but I want to respect your time and say thank you for coming out. We'll do this again in a few months, but thank you so much for being part of it. This deal, there's an initial vision, there's initial effort, but everything that we're doing here is the result of every person's hands pulling on the same end of the rope. And so I just want to say thank you. We couldn't do it without everybody that's part of this community. So thanks a lot.